So I'm just picking up my daughter, so I have my video off. Hope that's okay.
Totally, no worries.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here. Clary is on. Hey, Clary.
I was at that Stand with Ukraine thing at PS 145 today with Gail and Sean and Mark and all of them. And I ran into Christine, the superintendent of the District 3 schools. And so it was sort of like one of those things, do you wear the mask or do you, we're outside and we're on the playground. And no one can quite figure out what the mask requirement is or is not for schools anymore. Because apparently it's different for after school than it is for school and inside versus outside. And
Nice. I think we've got a few people from the public who have joined. I think, Max, can you let everyone in who's an attendee at this point?
Sure. You mean you'd like me to make them a panelist?
Or just, are they in the meeting? We can hear them.
They're able to watch as usual. Yeah. Oh, I see.
one of them is our colleague Ken Hogland.
I'll promote him. Yeah. Ken, if you're there, you just have to click the prompt and it'll enter you in. There you go.
So maybe we give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good.
Thanks.
And I'm here in the board office where it's nice and quiet. And thanks to Max for giving me a tour after 2 years. It's nice to see everything again. It looks great. So, all right, why don't we get started since it's 3 past the hour. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Pluto. I am basically the notional chair of a task force designed for Committee Board 7 to try to determine our next step for in-person and remote return to board meetings. We have a number of people from the public who are on tonight. The purpose of this meeting is really to gather feedback from the public first, and then from board members that we can then compile and come up with a set of recommendations before March 15th. We had an agenda. We do have an agenda. I can just run through it really quickly. We want to try to keep this meeting to 1 hour or less, depending on how many people from the public end up joining and board members end up joining. Happy to stay a little bit longer. But primarily, we wanted to give a brief overview, which Max will provide, of the current return policy and what's going on both at the legislative level, both city and state, and talking about March 15th, what's going to happen after that. And then we'd like to have a public commentary period for people from the public who can first, I think the first item of business was to talk about full board meetings and have them provide comments on how they see a return in person for full board meetings, how, when, if, as well as virtual meetings, virtual options for both board members and for the. And then secondly, from the public to hear from them about how they feel about committee meetings. Just for anyone who's an attendee tonight who has not visited our CB7 office, that's where I am tonight, where Max is as well. We typically hold our committee meetings here in this office. And, we wanted to sort of separate the conversation tonight between the full board meetings and the committee meetings to get people's feedback. So again, that would be a conversation about board members return and public return to committee meetings. Then we'll do the same thing for board members to have just some communication to get feedback from board members on those same topics. And then we'll wrap up and talk about that. So I think we can accomplish all that in about an hour. And unless anyone has any questions, I think we maybe should just go to the 2 members of the public who are here tonight and ask them what they think. Before we do that, have Max take a couple minutes to talk through the sort of the update on where things stand with what our elected leaders have been telling us we should or should not be doing going forward. So over to you, Max.
Sure, thanks. So I'm speaking regularly with the Borough President's Office, and the general thought is that everything will expire and there is going to be a quick pivot come the 15th of this month. I think there's going to be some leeway, though, at that time for exactly how that looks like. I think everyone's anticipating a hybrid approach, but there's no clear guidance yet about, if the hybrid approach is okay, how long it'll be okay for, but that's generally the look of it. I did have my Borough Service Cabinet meeting, and that's where they generally, everyone at the Borough President's Office at that time seemed to feel that hybrid was probably going to be around to stay for a very long time, if not permanently. The only difference was they're still working out, well, is hybrid going to mean, board members? Is hybrid going to mean that way it's just for the public? I mean, who and what? And it just seems there's no clear indication yet of what that is. I thought I saw Mark had his hand up, actually.
Yeah, you started to address it, thanks. The question, I would want us to separate the board members' participation from the public's participation.
Someone's got noise in the background. They need to mute them.
Okay, is that better? It's not me. Anyway.
I don't hear noise.
I can't put it in the chat because we don't have chat. I guess I want to separate the board members' participation from the public's participation. Going forward, I'm not sure there's anybody who thinks that the public shouldn't be able to participate in whatever way works for the public. I think the question before us is the board members or voting members' participation. So on that score, is there any clearer guidance, Max, or is it the same?
Not yet, because people, like in our discussion last month or whenever that was, are getting hung up on like the small nuances. Are there people with medical? Where's the line drawn? Is it medical? Is it childcare? Is it people are just, are dual residents of areas, and is that okay if they're, zooming in from some other area that they live in? And there's no clear indication of where the line is drawn in those. There is a general feeling, though, I'll say, for willingness to be flexible. That's the general perception that I think everyone at the Borough President's Office agrees with. But what that looks like is still just yet to be determined. I have another one of those meetings coming up in, I think, 2 weeks or a week from this Friday. And that's a big topic on that agenda.
So again, I think the purpose of the call tonight is really to gather comments that we can submit to the Borough President's Office that can hopefully help guide them on their decision-making process, which is really what we want to try to get at tonight. And Mark, to your point, I mean, both for hybrid options for both board members and for people in the public, both at full board meetings and at committee meetings. So I hope the way I've divided it up makes sense to everyone. If they don't, please let me know now. And I think we can, if that makes sense, I think the goal is over the next week to try to compile by the end of the week comments from this meeting, along with anything that's come in over email, and send it to the President's Office and anyone else who's in a decision-making capacity, so that hopefully some suggestions we make can factor into their ultimate decisions on the 15th.
Elizabeth, it's Clary. I think your division does make sense, but I have a very specific factual question, if I could ask that of Max before. And that is, when we met a couple weeks ago, one of the questions was whether, if and when we are in person with full board meetings, whether we can require that anybody in attendance be fully vaccinated. And I think that was a bit unclear at the time, and I'm wondering whether we have any further guidance on that.
I can quickly jump in, although I might not be the specific person to answer. We can't but our venues that we choose have other, so I'll give an example. Lincoln Center isn't just requiring the vaccines, they're requiring the booster as well. So there's different levels of, and which facilities we'd choose to go to.
Max,
But
just as a follow-up on that, do we have, so our location for the April full board meeting is Case Church, right? Or
That's
not?
correct.
Or do we have,
Yes.
so that location, what does that location require? Do we know? Or what will it require then?
Sure. We're working with them on that. They have less stringent requirements than Lincoln Center. At least the requirements are less stringent for their when they have their actual patrons come in, is what I'm trying to say. So we can't really add and take it further, but I actually don't know off the top of my head what those requirements were, but I think they were much lower than Lincoln Center's as an example.
And I think everyone's seen the news today who has removed restrictions in places like restaurants and other places, even to not even ask for a vaccine. Not all of them are public places where we hold Community Board 7 meetings, but some of them might be at some point. So it seems to be a bit of a mixed bag. So I think I'd like to, just because we have, I think a couple people, Max, from the board who have their hands raised. I just want to make sure everyone who's joining right now, we did go through the agenda. What I really like is get to, unless there's a question about specific current legislation about how this is going to work.
I just have a comment about
if I could just finish.
The feedback we're getting.
I'm sorry?
The feedback. We're still getting feedback. I just want to encourage everybody to turn off their audio unless they're speaking. Not everybody has.
I hope it's not from the board.
I think.
I don't hear anything.
It wouldn't make it.
I
It wouldn't make
think
a good argument coming back from the board.
If I may.
I hear
think-
it.
I think it's Barbara because her screen keeps flashing around her picture as if she were the speaker and she's not. So now her mute sign is up. So I think it's okay now.
Got it. I just want to make sure it's not me in the board office because
No, I'm pretty certain it was Barbara because now her little red microphone is there. It wasn't there before.
all right. Okay.
I think that's solved, but we also have
Elizabeth-
now 2 board members who are currently
Exactly.
attendees. Should be promoted.
Elizabeth,
I'm just gonna quick jump in here, actually, everybody. And actually, if Shelley and Rich are listening, I've tried to promote you both to panelists. I keep getting an error code on my end. I'm almost wondering if all of the Zoom problems, including the feedback issue, are from this office tonight for some reason. We have been having some internet issues, and I'm wondering if that's part of it. Anyway, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question or have something clarified, and maybe Mark can, or maybe you can, Max. And that is, Lincoln Center currently is requiring boosters. But what happens when the mayor lifts the vaccination requirement for theaters and other nonprofit institutions? How will that impact Lincoln Center?
I think this is just my personal opinion. I think Lincoln Center is still, though, within their right, since it's their property and not, a government entity or a government property, to just continue on with whatever level of adherence they want to their own rules that they make.
Again, just in the interest of time tonight, since we're at 1:15 the hour already, I want to acknowledge, I think Bob Jackson was on the call for a minute. I don't know if he's still here, so thank you for joining if you're still on. Again, to just briefly go through, please somebody raise their hand if you're getting background noise and there's disruption in any way from the Zoom. But we did want to go through, we've gone through now what we know. What we'd like to do tonight, this call is being recorded, so we're going to send this transcript as well as anything that comes in online, comments from the public and comments from board members about the return to in-person and hybrid options for both full board and committee meetings for Community Board 7. And what we wanted to turn into now was turn to the public and those who have joined tonight. I see, I believe, at least 3 people, maybe 4, who have joined tonight, to turn to them and ask them what they think about both full board meetings and committee meetings, to get their feedback. Again, these are comments. This is not a debate or a discussion tonight. It's really just to hear what they have to say so that we can note it for the record, and ask any questions if we need to. And we'll start with sort of the issues related to full board meetings. And I guess I'll turn first to, I'm just going in the order of which I'm seeing them on the participant list. And I see Elizabeth Oram as the first person. So Elizabeth, I think we can unmute you, or if you would like to provide your thoughts, we'd love to hear from you.
I think I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Beth Oram. I'm a nurse practitioner with experience in geriatrics and public health. And based on the science, I believe a return to in-person meetings would be very risky. What I have to say will take about 2 minutes. The White House has issued a new COVID plan because they know new variants are coming. New surges will happen. Neither vaccination nor infection confers broad and lasting immunity. I am a big advocate of vaccination. I'm a nurse, but even 2 primary and a booster do not protect everyone from death. From November to February this year, there were 2,043 vaccinated deaths from COVID in New York City. In other words, over 2,000 New Yorkers who lost their lives in a 3-month period despite doing everything right. In fact, the risk of death in a boosted over 65-year-old is higher than for an unvaccinated 18 to 49-year-old. Boosters don't last forever. Based on excellent research we have out of Israel, we know that protection from the boosters wanes rapidly, starting at 10 to 12 weeks, and their trials of a second booster did not show a reduction in hospitalization. We are seeing exponential spikes in very highly vaxxed countries like New Zealand. This is because being fully vaccinated does not mean you cannot transmit the virus. And data from an excellent study in Denmark shows that being boosted only cuts the likelihood of transmission of Omicron by half. Therapies like Paxlovid and Evusheld will be a godsend to high-risk and immunocompromised people, but they are in short supply and they will be until next year. So there's currently no life raft for high-risk people on the board or in the public who come to meetings. This is a novel pathogen we know very little about. Consider that we've only just learned that the virus that causes mono is a cause of multiple sclerosis. This is to say that we have no idea what this virus is capable of. We'll find out eventually, but it won't be next week. In closing, I want to offer one final data point. The entire CDC workforce has just had their remote work extended indefinitely. And Rochelle Walensky, head of CDC, works from her home in Boston. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Those are being recorded for the record, and I'm sure they'll be useful as we think about recommendations and decisions. So thank you for testifying tonight. I want to go to the next person on the list from the general public before we go to board members' comments. And I have Reed Perrin on the list. Reed, are you still there? And could you unmute yourself and provide your comments?
Reed, if you're there, you can give it a try. Although everyone, you should know that I have a note from Reed here, and I'll read that. It says, I favor not going back to in-person at this time, and then in parentheses, my voice connection is not working. So I think that might be the extent of his contribution currently.
Got it. Okay, so next is Robert Tannenhauser. Bob, are you there? There, okay.
Yeah, I'm just here representing the West Side Reg, so I'm just reporting on the meeting.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. I don't know if you have comments about returning to Community Board 7 meetings in person versus virtually, but feel free to let us know if you do, either right now or you can send us an email.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have a 201 number. I don't know if that's somebody from the board or if it's a member of the public. If that person is on the line and would like to comment, feel free to do so now. You can unmute yourself.
I've given them capabilities to speak.
Okay. Thanks, Max. All right. So again, I think we're going to get comments. If any of the people from the public would like to provide further comments, just ping us or ping Max or me. I think what we
Elizabeth, just so the person on the phone knows, I think everybody knows by now that *6 is unmute on a phone, which appears to be what that is.
Right. I think this individual maybe, I don't know if it's a board member or somebody who's just listening in, but yes, either *6 us and join, or you can email us and give us your thoughts. So for the remaining time tonight between now and 7, what we wanted to do is continue the conversation we had last week with many of you and board members. And I appreciate everyone's feedback that they've given, not just last week, but over the past several months. We've had this task force in place for many months now, and every time we've tried to get together to talk about things, there's either been a new variant, or things have shut down again, or there's been some sort of issue that has precluded us from really making some recommendations. I think we can all agree on this Zoom tonight that we're in a position where the city is changing. The city is moving back to in person in various ways. City agencies are going back to in-person board meetings. I am not here to express my own personal opinions, even though I have strong ones, but I would love to hear, and I think tonight what we'd like to do, rather than have a discussion, which you're welcome to join the task force for those types of discussions, is to get testimony from board members about how they feel, first of all, about full board meetings returning to in-person. And we'd like to grant anyone on this call who's a board member 2 minutes to talk about, specific to full board meetings returning to in-person, how, when, and what your feelings are. So that's going to be the first item of business. And then we'll get into the committee meetings. So I see a lot of hands up. I'm assuming those hands up are related to full board meetings. And if they are, I will start with how I'm seeing them on the, just on my Zoom screen. And I see Arena, I see Ken, I see Jay, and then I see Rich and Shelley. So Arena, I can start with you. And again, 2 minutes for each person. Comments. This is not designed to be a discussion tonight or a debate. It's really just to get public commentary.
Thank you. I support a hybrid model for the full board meeting. I appreciate Elizabeth Orum's comments. I think that if there are individuals who want to attend in person, particularly someone like myself, who was appointed to the board during the pandemic and have not met board members in person, if I'm reticent, I can always come to the meeting and keep a mask on for the full meeting. But for those individuals who are not comfortable, who are immune compromised, perhaps for the next several months, giving them the option, a hybrid option would be suitable. But I would like us to get back in person. And for those of us that are concerned, we can wear a mask during the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhino. So I think I went next. I think I said, I think I had Jay and then Ken. I have it, the Zoom link is changing a little bit, but Jay next, Ken, then Rich and Shelley.
Okay. First, a quick question, and if I missed something, why were we talking about Lincoln Center?
That's the location where we've held full board meetings before, Jay.
Are you talking about Fordham?
No, I'm talking about, we've held them in the atrium before.
Oh, okay, but that actually wasn't one of our regular.
It was. We held at least 3 or 4 meetings there over the years.
Okay, all right. I'm in favor of a return to in-person full board meetings. I'm actually in favor of returning to in-person full board meetings for everyone, board meetings and the public as well. This Zoom facility, I think, is awful. Essentially everybody, whether it's board members or city agency representatives, it's like we've all been thrown into a pot, and being a board member has kind of lost, I believe, a lot of its significance in relation to the general public. I don't blame anyone because I think it's an unmanageable system, and there's a whole host of reasons why. But our meetings are an hour longer just because of the time it takes to vote and the pauses for mechanical problems and recognizing people and elevating people. My estimate, which is totally unofficial, is that essentially our meetings are about an hour longer than they would be if they were back to the normal live meetings. And then I feel there are issues, as Irena says, she's been on the board just during the pandemic and hasn't met anybody. And I think we've lost the aura of collegiality that being on the board produces. And I just am totally in favor of getting back to normal. But in the form of a question, we're not really going to have a choice, are we? I mean, the government's going to decide. We're a city agency, and at some point an edict is going to come down as to what agencies have to do. Am I wrong, Elizabeth? Or
Sure, you're not wrong. But part of the reason we're doing this meeting tonight and not with a month's notice is because we want to collect this feedback to provide it to the agencies. When we did our task force call in the last week or so, we know that there's going to be probably a new set of recommendations or something that happens by March 15th. And there are all sorts of deadlines that are happening on that date and beyond. And what we wanted to do as CB7 was provide sort of on one page, sort of a summary of some of the testimonials we've gotten from people that could help guide people. I don't know if other boards have had these conversations. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But I do think our board is sort of uniquely, has a lot of different opinions and a lot of good ones, as well as the public members who are here tonight, to provide that to them and to help guide them as they make a decision on what's going to happen next. I will say that just from a factual basis, and we talked about this at our task force meeting, that state agencies, so I cited the MTA as one of them, has been in person since the fall, once a month for their board members, and the public has an option to either dial in or to show up in public. And that seems to have worked well. That's one example. There are others, but I think the trend has been moving towards, at least for people who have taken, and board members at the MTA, as an example, are unpaid volunteers, as we all are as community board members. And that's what's being asked of them to do once a month, is to go in person to a meeting that is safe and ideally a place where they can convene once a month. And if they don't want to do that, they have an option of, basically giving a medical reason, I think, or potentially not staying on the board. But I don't think anyone's done that. I think they've all gone pretty much once a month in person. So I don't want to get into what other boards are doing. I'm just using that as an example of a government agency. And I'm sure that whoever is making these decisions, for community boards is going to factor in what other city agencies are doing. So
I just wanted to make the point that, you said that we're going to be receiving recommendations. I don't think we're going to be receiving recommendations. We're going to be receiving an order, as it were.
No, you're right.
That this is what it's going to be, that the open meetings law will be reinstated. The emergency suspension of it will expire, and we're really in the dark as to what options community boards are going to have. But as for gathering opinions, just again, I think what the MTA has done is the absolute minimum, and I would hope that the ultimate decision of the governor, mayor, legislature combined is that we go back to the way it was for everybody.
Thanks, Jay. That's and your comments have been echoed by people who are on this call, who have relayed them in writing to us. Ken, we're going to go to you, and then to Rich and Shelley.
Okay. I'm going to speak as forcefully as I can in opposition to forcing board members to return to in-person. Zoom may be awful, but long COVID or dying from COVID is even worse. The governor and the mayor have to balance commerce and public health. We don't have such constraints. Public health should be our board's overriding guide. Right now in New York City, we have 1,800 cases per day. Last July, when we were trying to get the open meetings law exemption extended, there were 350 cases per day. People on our board have varying levels of risk. Many are over 65 or maybe immunocompromised or have family members who are. I happen to fall into 2 of those categories. For these board members, COVID is a serious matter. This perception of elevated risk is not based on my personal feelings. It is based on the science. For example, boosted people over age 65 are more likely to die from COVID than unvaccinated people ages 18 to 49. And the vaccines are useless for many with compromised immune systems. Also, we need to lay to rest the notion that just because someone is triple vaccinated, they can't transmit the virus to another vaccinated person. They can and they do. We have to respect the safety of all board members. This is what the spirit of community means. We should be erring on the side of caution. As board members, we didn't sign on to put our lives on the line by attending meetings. We can't control what the governor or the legislature will do, but we can give our opinion. And so I would like to, at this meeting, propose a 2-part resolution. I just at 2 minutes. Can I propose my resolution?
You can, but we're not going to be doing resolutions tonight.
Okay, well, I don't know why we can't, but the resolution would be part 1, request an extension of our exemption from the open meetings law, and 2, support the Hoylman bill, and it's which is Senate Bill 7261, and its companion in the Assembly, which would allow public bodies like ours to make our own decisions when it's safe to be in person and when we feel it's prudent to be remote. And I would just say that if we are forced to go back to the committee room, to our office, to other venues, at the very least, we need to start employing mitigation measures. And those would include air filters, which are easy to build. Schools have built them. I can explain how. We need a CO2 meter to signal when air circulation is becoming inadequate. We need adequate ventilation. And ideally, we would have a mask mandate.
Great. Thanks, Ken, for your comments. I just want to relay to everyone again, this is a discussion right now about the full board meetings, not about where I am sitting right now, the Community Board 7 office. So I think we're operating under the assumption that any full board meeting that we would host would meet those requirements, Ken, that you have laid out. And we can certainly, but I think your points are really important and well noted and much appreciated. So let's go to Rich next, and then to Shelley.
So am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Good. So I don't want to get into the COVID issues. I defer to others, and there are many people smarter and more up to date on things on COVID. My concern is making CB7 as accessible as possible to as many community members as possible. And I worry that historically we've made it far too difficult for our constituents to join our meetings. And we end up excluding far too many people who aren't able to leave their homes, their children, and et cetera. And I think that at least doing hybrid meetings has two benefits, not just allowing more board members to attend who otherwise might have issues, but also community members. And I think having all the board members in a room and getting community members to attend remotely would be very difficult. I know there are pros and cons of in-person meetings, but I think the past 2 years have shown not only the problems that some people have raised, but also that there are a lot of great advantages. And I think we've made it far easier to attend, and we've had much greater community attendance at all our meetings, and especially at some of the more contentious ones. We've had over 1,000 people show up, which is fabulous. We all know that being on the board can be a big hardship, especially for people who have young children, parents, or other family members needing care. I don't think the MTA board is a good comparison. That's a very small group, a select group of experts, while community boards are 50 in each district. So there are over 1,000 community board members across the city. And I think we want to make sure that we accommodate a wide range of people, including those who have trouble getting to meetings for any number of different reasons. And allowing hybrid meetings achieves this. So I agree with Ken. I think we should do a resolution, if not tonight, then some other time. I think any decision should definitely be made by the full board. We should have a full discussion and ultimately come to a consensus or at least majority vote on what our position should be. I also, just a technical point, but I think a lot of people might not have known about this meeting. There was no email that went out to all board members. And I'd love to see
if I could just interrupt you right there. We started this meeting promptly at 6 o'clock and Max provided the information why. It was on Link NYC. It was sent out over social media. It was announced at the full board meeting. And part of the reason we did, as I mentioned, I think you were late to join tonight, but part of the reason we did this tonight and not 2 weeks from now is because we are running up against a March 15th deadline to provide this commentary. And this was really the only night where we felt we could have significant conversation. I'm happy to do another meeting, happy to, we're also going to be allowing and providing a resource online for people to provide comments online. We're going to consolidate that feedback and provide it to the borough president's office and to the state legislature by the end of the week.
So, and I don't think my 2 minutes were up. If I could just finish,
Yep.
That wasn't a critique of this meeting per se. I think it's all meetings. We should make sure that all meetings are emailed to all board members, just to make sure that everyone knows about them. As for this, especially if this was rushed because it's timely, I think that's that much more of an argument that we should, and it's too late because I don't think this meeting was legally noticed, so I don't know that we even can do a resolution, but I do think that we should weigh in as a board on what our view is on state policy. So that should be done as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I guess just my one question to you, just to clarify, when you mentioned the return for full board members, because that's what we're talking about right now in this part of the conversation, do you propose that any full board member at any time should be able to have a hybrid option? Or
Yes.
is it just people who have specific exceptions?
No, I propose any full board member at any time should be allowed to attend by hybrid. And that's not for COVID reasons. I think that just makes the board more accessible. I think it could make many more people able to join the board who otherwise just aren't able to be out of their homes at least 3 nights a month. And people who have whatever obligations they might be, people who might travel for work. I think we just limit ourselves to too small a group of people, and this could expand the pool of people who would be able to join.
Okay, no, thank you. Those are great, great comments and much appreciated. We'll go to Shelley now.
Thank you.
And then Barbara.
Over the past 2 years, I've been very fortunate not to contract COVID, my wife neither. I am over 65, and we have members of the family who are immunocompromised. And so we're extremely careful, even though we're very active and involved in the community in many areas, to be as cautious as possible. The idea of going back into a community board meeting, full board meeting in person, is something that I just would not do. First of all, I don't want to impose on others what, if we had to, something that I would expect, distancing, masking, the proper environment, which I don't believe any of these places have properly. I think I speak for a number of people on the board who I've spoken to who find this unacceptable at this time. I think I know also the possibility, of course, of people contracting COVID, transferring COVID. It just doesn't bear out that, the 2 shots in the boost that I got and others probably got is going to make that difference, and have one life to live. I think one very important thing that's happened over the past 2 years is we've had board members and people in the public who otherwise would not have attended meetings, full board meetings and others, attend, and some attend regularly now. We've had meetings, as was mentioned, with large numbers of people about things that they were very concerned about. I think that, number one, if we can avoid going back to full, in person, I'm all for that. If not, a hybrid model, giving people an option for their health and safety would be proper. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Well noted. I think I see Barbara and I see Bob Espier's hand up as well. So Barbara, over to you, and then to Bob.
Okay, please let me know if my computer's making any noises. I'm a little intimidated now. Thank you. I can't wait until COVID is finally over. I did have COVID really early on. I was bedridden for 9 weeks, and my recovery after that was quite a long time. I'm certainly not looking forward to getting it again. I do not want to get it again. I have done everything to avoid getting it again. And I outed myself the last time, and I spoke at length. I am immunocompromised, and I don't feel comfortable. I agree with Shelley and others who have spoken. Until COVID is over, I don't understand why we can't have some sort of a hybrid thing. I don't think that other people should have to out themselves by saying that they're immunocompromised. It doesn't make any sense. It's just like a violation of privacy to have to state that you're scared for whatever reason you are by COVID. And we are all affected by it. If we haven't been affected by it yet, we potentially certainly can be. It's never been made clear to me why we can't ask people if they were vaccinated, and we can't require that people wear masks in a room. I don't understand why we're any less important than Lincoln Center or any other institution, be it public or private. Anyway, that's what I have to say now. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Those are really, really good points. Shelley, I see your hand is up, but I see Bob's first. I don't know, Shelley, if that's just residual from, okay, it's down. Bob, over to you for your comments, and then I think we can talk for a couple minutes about committee meetings, and then I can provide a little bit of information before we close out at 7. Bob.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I think it's really fascinating that, and the ironies around the whole COVID thing, that there are actually collateral benefits to the whole, to the pandemic. And one of them is what we're talking about. And my comment is really punctuating what Richard said and what Shelley said, and I felt all along, that the Zoom is actually optimizing and making it possible for us to realize the mission that we have as a community board by charter. In other words, public education. And when I see one of our early meetings, you recall the meeting that we had under Laverne, where, unless I'm mistaken, there were 1,500 people on that call. See? And this is, and even at our very best, the very most that we can get in the different auditoriums at Roosevelt Hospital, a couple of hundred people, which is a nice turnout. But here on a regular basis, we get several hundred people at a time. And that's why we're here. We're here for public education. The pandemic has taught us that we've got to take public health seriously. And it's also telling us that we've got to take, we have an opportunity to put public education at work in the best possible way. And aside from the health issue, which is seriously concerned, I'm very fortunate that I haven't caught COVID to any extent. Week, 3, sorry to hear that Barbara is up for 9 weeks, my goodness, okay? And here she is. But I'm very fortunate others of us are as well. But I don't like the risk factor. So back to the gathering thing. I don't like that risk factor. I'm not comfortable, okay? I go to small gatherings, the holidays and that sort of thing. And aside from having very pronounced hermetic tendencies, where I just prefer to be home alone, okay? When I go out, I don't go in large groups. I went to an opening because I was in the opening up in Strasbourg over the weekend, and Pennsylvania is different. They don't care, but everyone had a mask on. It was lovely time. And 2 days later, I'm feeling fine still. But it's the idea of reaching, that's my essential point, of reaching that mass community, that great number of people on all of our issues, and they're very vocal, okay? And this is why we're chartered. They didn't know back when we were chartered that there was gonna be this issue. But it turns out that we see that through Zoom, and then who knew back then that there was gonna be such a platform? But here we have it, and here's this opportunity. So why pull back from that? You see, I'm not so sure about the camaraderie that Jay was speaking of earlier, and I respect that view because there is some of that. But I'm the kind of guy that goes to a meeting, sits there for 4 hours, and I just want to go. I don't want to hang out later and chit chat. So many people chit chat and hang on and this and that. No, after getting home at 11 o'clock at night, for me, is no joy. See, on Zoom, they have no excuses. I was a little late tonight, but all I have to do is turn the computer on and I'm here. I hated going to, and I live very near the main office. I'm on 94 and 87th Street. That's a hop and a skip and a hop for me. But in the rain and the snow and the cold, hate it. Okay?
Thanks.
So that's my point, Elizabeth, that if we have a good thing going and we've learned that it suits our purpose, our raison, okay? That's why we're here, public education, and this is the tool to reach the public.
Thank you, Bob. I see that our city council member has joined. Gail, I don't know if we're happy to update you on this conversation. We've had a lively discussion or testimonies tonight from both the public and from board members about how we return both the full board meetings into committee meetings, both for board members and for the public. I don't know if you'd like to say a word or two or give any thoughts. Max has been doing a great job advising us on what the latest is from open meetings law and legislative action. But if you have any details or anything you want to share, we'd love to hear from you. Okay. I think she's on mute, but maybe she'll join us in a minute or so. Maybe while we're waiting for her to provide comment, I wanted just to read without any attribution or any opinions, some of the comments I got from the task force over the last month, just to guide board member and the public's thinking. These were comments that were sent to me over the last few weeks. Number one was full board meetings should return in person once a month. Committee meetings should be fully remote. Second comment was committee meetings should be hybrid given the size of the CB7 office and health considerations. Comment number three was our newest board members. I haven't had the opportunity to meet them in the past 2 years, and I really miss those interactions. They have not experienced an in-person full board meeting yet. And then number four, which I thought was the most provocative, was cameras on should be required throughout a full board or committee meeting for board members. So I'm saying all those things without attribution, but those are things that are going to go in the file for our comments and testimony of people who have thought about it. I don't know if anyone wants to, in our remaining few minutes, unless we hear from Gail, if people have thoughts on that. We haven't talked about committee meetings, but I sense from this call tonight that most people do feel at a minimum for the committee meetings. You know, again, I think sitting here tonight, I know the board office has been doing incredible work. And Max, if you want to add anything to sort of what the updates are here in the board office for how things have resumed. But I think the hybrid option seems to be something that most people would like for committee meetings. I see a couple hands up for that, but maybe I'll turn it over to Max for a minute or so to provide any insights on the latest from the board office.
Sure, notwithstanding the current Zoom issues tonight, and I just want to apologize to everyone that we're having them. I think there must be something going on with our internet or the Zoom platform, because every time I try to go to promote someone to a panelist, we keep getting a failed error message. So I'm sorry if anyone that hasn't been able to join that way. The board office has been operating otherwise, you know, fairly fine. Jesse and I are in here a few days a week each. And that's pretty much where we're going. We've kind of, I believe before I came on board here, there were some actual improvements to maybe the air filters or something, but I actually would not be the best person to speak about that, because I think that took place before I arrived.
Thanks, Max. And again, we can report back on that. I mean, as somebody who's here today, I feel like it's safe. I wouldn't want 100 people in here for a contentious land use meeting like we used to have. But you know, I don't think any of us want that. And I think the approach of, you know, I think one of the recommendations, or at least things I've heard overwhelmingly from people, is that there seems to be a consensus that at the committee level is somewhat different than the full board level in terms of bringing people back physically in person. If the hands raised are addressing that, then I'll take them as I see them, which is Mark, Clary, Jay.
Oh, Elizabeth, could I just
go with their hands raised
you,
first?
caution you not to say things like this is the consensus. As I'm looking around the screen, I think it's the consensus that in-person meetings, full board or committee, people are against it. So, you know, if you could really try to tone down the editorializing.
Sure, I'm just trying to relay what I've heard from people and relay that. I'm managing the meeting. I'm not trying to invoke opinions here, but what I have heard overwhelmingly from people who have come to these meetings in the past has been that they strongly prefer a hybrid option for committee level meetings. Again, we've moved from the full board conversations to the committee levels. And, you know, I think a lot of that is because of health and other considerations to a lot of the valid points that you raised, Ken, and others tonight. So again, I'll now move to the people who have raised their hands. Again, I'm sitting in the board office. If there were 100 people in here, personally for me, I probably wouldn't necessarily want to be here, but I'm here tonight and I feel like they've done a good job of at least getting this office up and running again. And I would encourage any board member to come by and meet Max and see him, and you know, get to know the board office if you haven't yet. So Mark, and then Clary, and then Jay.
Okay, I wanted to comment on the topic a while ago. You just raised another one, so if I could give my 2 minutes on where we are, is that okay? Okay, thank you. So I'll do this. The highlights of what I want to raise are a couple of points. One of which is that even last Tuesday on Zoom, and something that Elizabeth was much more effective as chair than I was about, there were only 40 people in our meeting last Tuesday. And on Zoom, one would hope for a higher turnout than that. That's about what we get at most full board meetings. Where I'm going with that is that anything that would threaten the ability to have even 40 people decide an important issue is of concern to me. And that's kind of where I am. So I would divide my remarks into what is the near term and what is the long term. And I cannot help you with what is the long term. When does that line change? I believe personally that the lifting of mandates that the mayor announced last Friday with our colleague in Times Square were driven by practicalities and commerce and politics, but not necessarily by science. And that concerns me. It concerns me because the result might be that some of our colleagues would be deprived of the opportunity to vote. They wouldn't be deprived of the opportunity to participate in a hybrid meeting. But after March 15th, if nothing changes, they would be deprived of the opportunity to vote. And while it's always my goal to have our resolutions pass 40-0, the reality is that sometimes they pass 23-22. And who knows who that last person might have been. And the other thing, so we made the point about science. So in the near term, I would favor a hybrid option for all of our meetings, both full board and committee meetings, where there is no need to explain why you're doing one or the other. In the long term, I think it is appropriate that we be back in person, because I think there are people who don't have access to Zoom who we used to see show up at our meetings. Anyway, so that's a realistic issue too. The longer term, I believe you should need to explain to the chair of the board why you're participating remotely. But we're not there yet in my estimation. 20 or so people died the last time I looked on a single day, and anything that would kill 20 New Yorkers in a single day other than during this pandemic would have been the front page of the New York Post. So I think that we need to divide our So I would favor us advocating for an extension of hybrid until such time as the numbers coalesce with the politics. And then after that, we switch to a different model that ought to be taken up by our bylaws committee with information from this task force. I'll shut up now.
Thanks, Mark. As usual, those are brilliant points and very well taken. Again, we're recording the meeting, so all this will be sort of transcribed and sent over based on what everyone has said tonight. So we're going to go to Clary and Jay. And again, I just wanted to ask Gail if she would like to speak at any point. Just let us know. Clary, over to you.
I did unmute. Okay, I just unmuted a second time. My comments are largely directed to full board meetings. And I wasn't going to say anything because I largely agreed with Jay and with Irena, but also share the concerns of Barbara and Ken and Shelley. What it seems to me but I was troubled by what Rich said about all meetings forever without regard to COVID should be optional in person for board members. I just think that's wrong. And also I was troubled by what Robert said. So I just want to make 2 points. One is that, yes, we have learned that we can engage the public and want to continue to engage our constituency. Zoom has had advantages and disadvantages. And we can't sort out the specifics tonight, and it's going to be hard to sort them out. But my overall point is we want to be able to capture and maintain the advantages while not forever being stuck with the disadvantages. The other single point I want to make or agree with Mark on is that we need to take it gradually and see how COVID sorts out. I agree that there ought to be some kind of hybrid situation where people are really concerned about where board members are really concerned about attending an in-person meeting should have a different option in the short run, however long that short run is while COVID is still with us. But I think we need to take that with the science and with developments as the months go by, and not treat it as something that becomes permanent unless we have real reason to rethink as time goes by. That's all I wanted to say tonight.
Thanks, Clary. And again, I think, again, not to speak for everyone on this call, I think we want to make certain that we are not in the business of trying to ask people for reasons for why they can't join a meeting. We're not trying to invade into their personal lives or their issues for these things. And so those points that were raised by several people tonight are well taken. I do think as we get into the longer term, scenario as Mark describes, I think there is going to be a time where there has to be a discussion about whether the board, do we have to make an exception for people, just like we've done in the past when somebody's ill, or if they have, a child who's sick. It's not our business to know those things necessarily, but those are complicated issues that I think in the long term, we're going to have to address further down the road. So I see Gail has joined. I don't know if I think she may be hanging up and may want to join, but I can't tell if she's still on her phone. I see her. So maybe Jay, we'll start with you since you're the last person with your hand up. Oh wait, Gail.
I'm just listening because I'm not very focused and I'm on the phone. So just keep doing whatever you're doing.
Okay, so Jay, why don't you go ahead and then we'll try to wrap up and let Gail offer her comments and everything.
Yeah, you had broken this up into full board.
Yes.
And committee, so I wanted to go on record as saying, obviously, I feel the same way about committee meetings, that they should at some point go back to normal, which is in person, both for members and attendees. I echo what Clary just said, and Mark's point is well taken about the short run versus the long run. However, I believe that the short run and long run's borderline will be defined for us by the rules and regulations that we're going to be required to adhere to, and by a return to the existing open meetings law, unless there are further emergency exceptions to it or changes in the legislation. But again, I think in contrast to what Robert's feelings are, or Rich, or Ken, particularly with committee meetings, our committee meetings are no longer discussions. As with our full board, they have become a series of 1-minute speeches, which we are limited to, or 2-minute speeches that are no different. There's no more leeway than there is with the public. And as far as the numbers are concerned, I don't track the numbers of participants at our meetings, but occasionally I like to gamble, and I would gamble that we don't have 1,500 attendees at our meetings. And what we've found out is that a lot of the attendees are not residents of our district. They are advocates, representatives of organizations who think they have a stake in some of the issues that we're concerning. And as you know, if you can't make a commitment as a community board member to attend one full board meeting a month and a couple of committee meetings, short-term health considerations aside, for the long term, then you shouldn't be on the board.
Thanks, Jay. Those points are well taken. Ken, unless I see you reaching for your phone, but unless Gail wants to go now, we'll go to you and then we'll wrap up. So Ken, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm off the phone.
And again, this part of the conversation is about committee meetings.
I got it. No, I totally agree with Jay. I would love to. I really miss the collegiality. I think things have gotten more polarized, actually, because we can't meet in person. But I'm not willing to endanger any board member's health, to avoid those things. That's or life. That it's not an ideal situation to be on Zoom, but it's decidedly less ideal to be on a ventilator or to be dead, or to have long COVID. So I'm absolutely against committee meetings. I would dearly love to go to my favorite downtown art house, movie house, and see films. And it's something that I will not do. And sitting in a basically unventilated office with 20 other people is essentially the same thing. And I won't do that either. As I said, if we're forced that way, I have some ideas on air filters that can be built very simply and cheaply. Schools have done them, and also I think the board office should invest in a CO2 meter. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Ken. Again, points are very well taken. Again, the purpose of tonight is to gather contributions from everyone, and I appreciate everyone who's taken the time out tonight to provide their comments. We all bring unique perspectives. Just looking at the group of board members who are on the call, most of us have been on the board for a number of years, have met each other in person. There, is a whole cadre of new members who are part of the board, new members who will be joining, who have not had the opportunity to get to know each other. And, they've provided their comments as we've discussed tonight as well. So I think there's, a variety of different opinions. My job is not to opine on them, but to just collect the feedback for the task force. And that's what I'd really like to do. Speaking in the capacity as somebody who used to chair the board, I do think there is merit to, once a month being in person when it's safe to do so. But again, I think there's a short term and a long term, as Mark said, that we need to be thinking about. And then when it comes to the committee meetings, I do think the importance of democratizing our board. 10 years ago, I wanted to get a Twitter page and a Facebook account and live stream our meetings. And I think many of you remember this. It took a while to get those things started. I think, Rich, that might have even preceded you, even though you were the person who actually implemented it for us, which was fantastic. But those are things that we need to continue doing, but we also need to think about the people who don't have Wi-Fi access, who don't have proper internet, and we need to make sure they're included too. And for some of those people, the only way they have to engage is to show up in person to something. And so, I think there's a lot going on, and I think the more we can do to offer a range of options to people as we move forward is hopefully going to yield something good for community boards, not just for CB7, but for across the borough and the city. Gail's still on the phone, so I don't know if she wants to contribute tonight or if but I think just to talk about next steps for a minute, because I don't want to go too far after 7. We want to collect these comments, send them to our city and state officials so they have a few days to read through what the testimony has been and can look through the transcripts. Their staff can read through the comments that were made tonight and throughout previous conversations. I think we owe to you all who have asked really good questions tonight what some of the very specific answers to your questions that you rightly demand about what the next steps are. And the task force is going to have to get back to you on those things. I do see 2 hands up, Rich and Clary. And I don't know, Gail, do you want to go first? I see you.
Oh, go ahead. Keep talking. Okay. I'm listening.
Rich and Clary, Rich, do you want to go and then Clary? Or...
Yeah, I just want to say two things. One is, definitely there are people with digital issues, connectivity issues, or any other issues. I do think we should offer hybrids so that they can attend in person. But in the same way, I think we should be as accessible to as many people as possible. Second thing is talking about live streaming. There was a lot of opposition back then as well. And I think we had consensus. We didn't have consensus. We had majority opinion. We moved forward. And I think it's been a fabulous thing that we've been able to make our meetings that much more accessible, both to people attending real time from other places, but also having an archive online. And
maybe we can have our minutes done via just sending the YouTube link instead of
well, not only that, but there's a group block party that's automatically scraping the transcripts of all meetings and sending out emails of the highlights of meetings. So a lot of really interesting opportunities come from embracing technology. And I think making sure that we're hybrid and that we give access really is what we're all about. And we should.
I mean, let's think about a way that we can, like, coming out of the last 2 years of darkness, like, use Zoom in a positive way. And I think we can do that as a board. I do think I want to acknowledge the people who do feel like most of the people who want to go back in person also feel like when you become a member of a community board, you do take on a level of responsibility that is not just zooming in from points near and far or from whatever, that there is an element of like commitment that you make. And I think that's where some people, the feedback I've gotten has come from is that the technology is good, but there needs to be that sort of at least once a month commitment to being able, whether it's in person or unless you have, extenuating circumstance, again, in the long term, once we get out of this, to be able to be there in person to collaborate with your colleagues.
But again, I think that's hearing from the people who have joined the board who are able to do it. I worry about the people that we're excluding because they're not able to make it to the in-person meetings. And the more that we can expand the pool.
Those are all really good points, really good points. Okay, Gail, over to you. And then I think we'll just close out, and Max, unless you have anything else left from the board office, we'll wind this up and talk about next steps for a second.
I don't have a lot to add. The city council in its general meeting is doing everybody, I would say 3/4, maybe 3 or 4 people who do not, and they are virtual and the screen is big enough, and that's how it works. So if you can get, we have, same number basically as you do. All but 3 people show up every meeting, and it works. Yeah, committee meeting today in person, but there were, there's maybe, 7 people on the committee. I think 3 of them were virtual. It's a very sophisticated system in the city council, so it doesn't feel like there's a time difference. And of course, the city council is on channel 74. So it is streamed. It makes it boring, I think, for the person who's watching it somewhat. But I do think you need to go back in person, and I think you need to have and figure out the most sophisticated technology, because there's nothing worse than, somebody saying, "Oh, I can't hear you," or muting, all that. So that needs to be as tight as possible. But I do think in person. I was at an event in December in Board 12, and the new members had never, ever met the current members in person. And they were miserable. They really want to quit, to be honest with you. And had thought as a group of quitting because they were so discombobulated and siloed. So I do think, and at the very least, I know people are out, guys. I'm just saying that, I know the COVID is not gone, but people are out. So if you're, I don't know, if you need a better filtration system in the office, then we need to work on that if that's an issue, because I don't think there are any windows there. But I think you can find places to meet that have windows if that's an issue. Right, you know better than I because you're there. So I'm just saying, I think the world is going to have to be in person with some exceptions, and then have a really good system that people can quickly adapt to. And then if the public wants to testify from virtual, I think that's okay. That's sort of the hybrid that we've been talking about. But I think in person as much as possible, to answer your question. And the city council is doing it.
Thanks, Gail. That's good to know.
Okay,
We brought up before you joined the example of the MTA as well, the MTA board meetings being once a month in person as well. So I
Can
think
I
this is,
ask Gail a question?
Gail, do you have time for a question or are you?
I'm in the office. Go ahead.
Okay. Can city council members who are remote, can they vote? And are they
Yeah.
counted as present?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, if the open meetings law doesn't get changed and it's not extended, the exemption is not extended, we'll have to show up to be counted as present and
Right.
vote.
And they have, in one case, they don't have any, they just don't like to come in. That's another topic. But definitely, yes, they can vote, to answer your question.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken. That was a good question. Okay, so we've collected a lot of good testimony, both from the members of the public who came. We're going to offer, Max and I are going to work on this after this meeting closes, making sure we can allow for public comments coming in through the website or through email, so we can collect anyone who wasn't able to join tonight, whether they're a board member or a member of the public. And then try to compile over the end of the week. If any of you are interested in joining me in that process, to basically, we're just going to summarize and provide the links to this call tonight and other meetings that we've hosted, in the hopes of providing just some anecdotes, about how people both in our neighborhood who are board members and people who are members of the public feel about this return. But everyone obviously has very, very good reasons for their comments, and we're really, I just am grateful for your feedback tonight. And unless there are any other questions, we will adjourn for tonight. And I'm happy to answer any questions offline, but really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your responses and sticking to time so that we can let everyone enjoy the thunderstorms that I think are about to.
Elizabeth, if you were
hopefully,
asking
Gail,
for,
you can get up. I don't know if you're at the district office or if you're downtown, but if you're so we can all get home before the real rain starts.
Elizabeth, if you were asking for partners to help put this all together, I'm glad to do whatever you need.
Perfect. Let's definitely talk this week. Our goal is to try to get something together Friday. And Gail, if you could help us in any way with just making sure that this gets in the right hands of the elected officials before the 15th, which I know is a big deadline for them on making some of these decisions, that would be great. So thanks, everyone. I hope you all enjoy your evening. And again, thanks for joining us tonight. Talk to you later.